We are live here on the Black Motivation broadcast. We are super duper excited to have super producer, super DJ, Derek Smokin Jones. A fellow
What's up?
on
Hey,
here.
everybody, how you doing?
Hey, so excited. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Poor little me. I'm just here.
I have an idea. That you're not just poor little me. You know what I mean? But we're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna
Okay. I'm ready. What you got?
excited. So let's hop into it. So you have had such an instrumental just positioning, when it comes to Chicago house music and the creation and the flow and where it came from. So talk a little bit about it because you've been, a host and you've been in the industry for about 35 years now. So how did you get into producing and DJing? Let's start there.
Well, I started into the whole DJing thing through my uncle. My uncle had, a couple of clubs and lounges. And when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, he would sneak me in there and put me in the back, and I would stand up on milk crates and I would play 45s, and everybody thought it was a jukebox. And
Hey.
one day when he would do this thing on, I think it was on Thursdays, where he would put out this big buffet of food and everything, and it was on the side where he had the DJ booth in his club, and or in his lounge. And people would come over there and scoop up plates, and then they kept saying, man, they said, whoever picked all the music on the jukebox, man, they doing a good job. How do they know when to play it? How and one lady came back there just being nosy and happened to see me up there playing a bunch of 45s, and she said, you got this baby in here playing music? and then they were like, how does he have the knowledge of these songs? Because I'm playing old blues songs and dusties and and I'm just having a good time. And then as things progressed, we had a station in Chicago called 107.5, which was 102.5, which was WBMX. It was WBMX radio. And that was the Hot Mix 5, and they were doing their thing. And a friend of mine says, hey, you listening to the mixes? And I'm like, what is that? He said, you don't, because I was a WLS kid. I was listening to Pink Floyd and Kiss and Elvis Presley and the Doors and, all these types of groups. And, a little bit of my parents, disco, and, I wouldn't call it disco at that time. They're R&B, Motown music.
Right.
So, when I heard the mixes, you had Farley Funk and Keith, Kenny, Jason, Scott Smoking Seals, Minnie Mix and Oliver, Ralphie Rosario. They made up the Hot Mix 5. And I remember hearing this constant flow of 4/4 time music being put together without any breaks in it. And it just fascinated me at that point. I was like, I'm hooked. And I said, I got to know more about this house music stuff. And that just kind of followed my trend as a DJ getting started. Wanting to get started, but it wasn't so much that, because before any house guy, pretty much most house guys all had to be dancers,
right?
So I was in a club dance troupe called Straight Up and Down, and that was the time we would dance in a crew, and I would be the tidal wave, other guy be the pop locker, and then we would go to all the little clubs. And there was a high school in Chicago called Mendel Bi-Level. It's called Southside Prep now.
Okay.
And that was where a founder, Steve Poindexter, Kurt Townsend, a lot of these guys, they had created sets down there for kids our age. Even Herb Kent, when he was alive, they were all down there doing different things. And the house thing really took off there. So that's where I went, started going there dancing and partying every weekend. And I said, ooh, I'm watching the DJs on stage doing what they were doing. And I said, I want to do that because I
Yeah.
saw people up there look like me, you know.
Yeah. So tell me, what are some of the things that you saw them do that really drew you to the stage? Like, what are some of your signature things that you do as a DJ?
Well, one of the things that drew me to what they did was just putting together the records at the right time and watching the crowd reaction.
Yes.
And, you know, when you're a dancer, you get into that rhythm. You get into knowing what to expect. You got to read the crowd and know the flow. You know, real DJs build off of heart rate. So you have to build the crowd up. So you start at a low heart rate and a low BPM, and you kind of gradually bring them up to a climax, you know. And then when you get them up there, you keep them up there. And that was kind of that thing that always fascinated me as a dancer. So I carried that over as a DJ as well, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, watching them, you know, put records on and move the needles and do the scratching and the blends and the quads and, you know, well, let's triples and stuff like that. So when I say quads and triples, that's technology now. You can push a button and do it.
Right.
You know, back then you had to get doubles of the same song, and you would set them up in such a way where you would have them repeat themselves. So like you catch one record, and let's say you grab a part that says, hey, you know, and you just scratch that, hey. And then, so now you do a quad with it. You go, hey. So it's like that, you know, now you can hit a button and do it, and you don't have to even work that hard.
Yeah. So there's a lot more skill, you know, that went into it. Not more skill, a different skill. Let's put it that way.
It was that DJing back in the early 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. You had to have real skill. You know, and I'm not taking anything away from the new technology DJs, because I have new technology in my studio. And when I DJ, so I get it, you know, times change, things progress. But yeah, back then you have to work for your dollar.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the story, for sure. So if you could go back in time and tell yourself anything at the beginning of your career, knowing what you know now, what would you say?
Well, one of the things I think was a blessing and a curse for me early on was I was raised by pretty much a country great aunt, and my father was from the South. My mom was the city slicker, you know.
Okay.
But I was raised by my great aunt, and the values that they instilled on me was stay humble and let your work speak for itself.
Right. Okay.
And if I could go back in time, I would tell myself, throw all that in the garbage. and to a degree, and what I mean by that is when you get into show business, when you get into this kind of business, one of my mentors was, you know, Farley Funk and Keith, which is now today, his name is Farley Jack Master Funk. You know, he told me, he said, man, you got to beat your own chest. You got to toot your own horn sometimes, and you got to get out there and make people know that you're there, or they'll miss you, you know. And I told my, you know, parents that, and they're like, oh, don't listen to that. Just if you're going to be that DJ and you're going to play them records, just go play them records the best you can play them records. And all the people going to do it, because really they didn't have any concept. The only thing they thought about was a DJ. Okay, you put a record on, you put the needle on it, and you let it play. I don't understand why you want to do this. That's not a real job. That's not a career. What are you doing? And, you know, and I said, well, no, he told me, and they kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. Just play the records. Don't worry about what he's saying. I don't, you know. And they didn't understand that this was a whole new dynamic. DJing was going into a whole new thing, you know.
Yeah. And so talk a little bit about that. So talk a little bit about that. How, you know, DJing has changed from then to now. What changes have you seen, good, bad, or indifferent, since, you know, you first started?
Well, man, you know, we would have to do a series, because I mean, I'm serious, because house music has so much history going back to into the early 80s all the way to present, and then it's an explosion of genres.
Yeah.
But that house music has created. But I guess one of the things I think is the work ethic is a little different because technology has made it a lot easier for you. A lot of people can go out if they got a good credit card or they got good credit or they got, some money that they can hustle up. They can go out and buy a DJ controller or a computer, or they don't even have to buy any of that. They can just buy a laptop or a tablet and get a bunch of songs and plug into something and play. Before it was a little bit more costly to buy, and
equipment.
Equipment. Yeah, it was, and that's what kept a lot of DJs out the game coming up when I was coming up, is because 2 sets of turntables back then could have ran you, anywhere between $800 to $1,000, and a lot of people that was a lot of money back then.
Right.
And then buying a decent mixer might have ran you $600 or $700, $300-400, which was kind of expensive back then. Then you had to have speakers and amplifiers and EQs, and the list goes on. And back then, if you say, "Ooh, man, I bought $5,000 worth of equipment," that was saying something. Now you say you buy $5,000 worth of equipment, and people be like, "Yeah, you didn't spend that much," because a good pair of CDJs that made by Pioneer, Denon turntables, they could they could run you anywhere from 3,500, 2,500, $3,000 a piece for each unit, and then you're gonna spend another $2,000 or $3,000 on a mixer, and you haven't even gotten to your speakers yet and anything else. Yeah, so you got a good $10,000 bill, anywhere between $6,000 and $10,000. Some people hustle and find deals, but realistically, if you really set up right, you're gonna spend about 10, 15 grand on something.
So, in that sense, it's gotten more expensive, but as you said, with the times, that amount of money was expensive back then. It was
right.
It's expensive then, it was expensive now.
Well, okay, let me cut the butter on that a little bit. You can, like I said, if you get a good laptop and you download a program like Serato, or you download a program like Virtual DJ or these types of, and you can put them on there. And I went to boat parties where guys have used nothing but their laptops. I've seen them do it. I've seen guys work on their tablets. So
the technology has changed the game.
Yeah, and then if that's all you had to buy, or you buy a mini, and now they're selling what they call quick pack mini controllers that run off of battery packs now, and you can store music in them. They come with their own hard drive. You can use a laptop. You don't have to use a laptop. You can put it in your backpack, pull it out, plug it into a sound system, and play. So it's made it a lot easier too, and it all depends on your pocketbook and how far you want to go in this.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about that. You also own a record label. Let's get into it. Power Mix Group 1 Records and Entertainment. So how did that come about? Talk a little bit about that.
Actually, Power Mix actually was initially a DJ crew.
Okay.
And it was never meant to be a label. And before it was a DJ crew, it was actually going to be a terrestrial internet radio show that was being planned to be put together in the early 2000s. And Power Mix Group was actually going to be a station where a bunch of DJs and different substations came together, and they would play under Power Mix.
Right.
And then the partner I had at that time, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have a crew. And then we formed a crew of about 7 or 8 DJs, and we were going to go out and do concerts and different shows and DJ picnics and stuff like that. And that kind of fell apart because of egos. A lot of guys had egos and they couldn't work together. And this one felt he was more important than that one. It just got ridiculous. And then it faded. And then I said, okay, well, I still got the name. What am I going to do with it? And I didn't want to go back to any of the old classic Chicago labels, because some of the classic Chicago labels in Chicago was like DJ International, Chicago Track Records, which I was a producer on for years, and um, one called Rockin' House, ran by Rodney Baker. And those were kind of like our three to go labels in Chicago at the time. And they had kind of, when I got back, heavier in the game, they had kind of died down a little bit, and I needed an outlet to get my music out and do things. And then I said, well, hey, I want to bring in new artists. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I said, hey, what am I going to name the label? Then I said, oh, you know what? I still have Parmix Group. I'll use Parmix Group. So that's how it came. So I had to add the entertainment in it because we did other stuff.
Right. Makes sense. So when you're looking at signing artists, when you're looking at working with new artists or, new people in the industry, what advice do you have to give to them in order to come and step to you, whether it's stepping correct? What advice do you have to give?
Well, here's an interesting story about that. I used to pull a lot of people onto the label. And it's been a big debate. It's all over my Facebook page. I mean, and they're still like literally chiming in on this post that I did. Well, I did a number of posts, and I did a live video like at 3:00 this morning. And, it was just about the industry as a whole. And the point I'm trying to make with that is, when guys and people were coming to me and you sign them, in their mind, everybody who brings you something in their mind always feels like this is the killer cut. It's going to make me millions of dollars. I'm going to roll over in my bed, on Friday, and by Monday morning, I'm going to be a millionaire.
Right.
And it never happens that way because it requires marketing. It requires promotion. It requires, a niche, do you have the crowd? Do you have, are they in tune with what you're playing? And, we would, as record labels, we work with distributors to get our music out all over the place in hopes of getting sales. So a lot of times when people see their music all over the place, they're thinking, oh, I got to be making all this tremendous money. And it's never that. It's always, one of those things where because of digital downloads and stuff nowadays, and everybody's kind of doing the same thing, everybody's music kind of sometimes gets lost in the sea of thousands and thousands of dance tracks that are coming out every month. And if you don't have that track that really stands out, or that payola money to get yourself charted and things in the industry, you really don't do that well on sales, And so you have guys calling you up, yeah, I know I got at least about $5,000 now, right? No, you got $5 right now because you made 0.1 cent and a half on some streams, so that came up to like about 30 cents, and then you have you sold a few records here, you sold a few records there, so that's about $2 here, that's $1.49 here, so the MP3 thing, in my opinion, now was a bittersweet thing because it made it easier for DJs to go get music, and it made it easier for artists that wanted to get out into the mainstream and that couldn't afford getting vinyl pressed and real records pressed and wrapped and sold. And so the MP3 age made it easier for all these boomtown producers and everything, because all they had to do was go get on their computer, put together some type of track that they think is good, and immediately upload it and say, hey, on a site, and say, hey, I'm here, I'm on this, I'm on that. And people will buy, the downloads. The downside to that is if a one person buys my song, I may get that money, depending on if it's direct to me,
right,
or if it's going through a distributor. If it goes through a distributor and the store, everybody's going to pitch a big piece of bread, and everybody's getting their cut out of it. And by the time you get your piece of bread, it's about this big.
Right.
So, it all depends. So if you have a sale direct, you say, well, okay, I can do this and I get the majority of my money, but then I'm losing money because that one MP3, somebody could buy it and duplicate it and give it to 100 people, and you never see a dime. You
Good
know,
information. Ray Daniels just tuned in. I have a radio segment on the Ray Daniels Morning Show. He just tuned in and said, "Good information." You are dropping gems here. Okay. All tuning in. Thank you, everyone who's tuning in. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. This is the Black Truth Media, the Black Motivation Broadcast. We are here for you. So while we're getting all this good, juicy information, if you have any questions, drop them in the box.
Drop them in the box.
Drop them in the box.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but continue.
Yeah. So I kind of like the old days of selling units, vinyl. Vinyl records are tangible. So if I printed up 100 records, you know, at $1 a piece, and I give them to you on consignment, you're gonna either do two things. You're gonna say, well, on consignment, you'll sign off saying that I received 100 records. And then the ones that you sell, you take your percentage, you give me my percentage. Okay. And the ones you don't sell, you give back. Or you'll buy the whole order. You say, okay, I'll buy 100 records from you for $100. They're mine. I've already paid you. And then the record store would then sell those units, and then whatever they had left, they kept them in the back room for archives, or somebody might say, hey man, do you have that record so-and-so? So I always liked vinyl because it was very tangible, you know. And then we weren't really dealing in that stage of duplication back then where everybody could just, you know, rip music from something. You know what I mean? So it made it a lot harder. And I'm not, and now even with the digital age, you can still buy a vinyl record, put it on a digital player, and it will rip all of that music off of it and turn it MP3 away. You know, so it's still totally no way around it. So it's, you know, a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, kind of. But on the flip side, I still kind of pro advocate vinyl wax records. You know, the unit's good. The direction I'm going in now is kind of 50-50. I'm going to stay MP3 sales and streaming, and then certain select choice songs I'm only going to make available on vinyl.
I love vinyl. I'm a huge, huge fan. So definitely feel you on that. So what are some lessons that you've learned or been given, you know, by people who came before you or people who came alongside you that you either wish you implemented or you did implement that you feel were instrumental in your success?
Well, like I said, one of the lessons learned was to be more aggressive about my career. You know, when you're in the music industry, you cannot really be relaxed. You know, you got to constantly figure out how to reinvent yourself, market yourself. You know, there's a thing called a micro niche. And I always tell this to people coming in the game. Your micro niche is that small group or that small following that you have that's into what you do. And you keep marketing and selling to them, and then eventually they'll draw other people in, and they will start to build fan clubs and groups, and people will start coming in, and all of a sudden, you know, you went from 5 or 6. I tell people never get upset if you only got 5 or 6 fans. 5 or 6 fans can bring you 500, 50,000. You just don't know. You never know who that super fan is that will go hard for you and say, hey, you know, I love DJ so-and-so. I love producer so-and-so. Listen to their music. I'm going to their parties. You know, your fans are your biggest promoters for you, you know, and they will rally up and say, oh, you know, he's doing a picnic, or he's doing a festival, or he's doing this. And they'll put on the t-shirts, and everybody just want to go because they're having fun and they're so excited. You say, hey, I want to see what all the excitement is about. Yeah, give me a shirt, I'll go. And then all of a sudden you're a fan. And that all starts from a micro niche. You got to nourish your micro niche. A lot of people get so discouraged. Man, I only got 3 people, I only got 4 people. And, you know, and then they don't try and work that hard. And you should be doing absolutely the reverse, because if you can keep them interested and keep them following what you're doing all the time, you're gonna make it. You know, you got to treat them like they're a big audience.
Exactly. So true. And speaking of which, I want to thank my audience that's tuning in with us tonight on the Black Motivation broadcast. We got a couple questions coming in. Ray Daniels has a question. He said, what's your recommendation for new artists in market radio runs, Spotify, or nightclub DJ runs?
Okay, that was a lot. Give it to me one more time, a little bit.
Let's slow it down for you. Yeah. So what is your recommendations for new artists in the market, radio runs, Spotify, or nightclub DJ runs?
Well, that was part of my Facebook post today, because I was really coming down. I was really coming down on stream sites and stuff like that. You know, really, it is really the same thing. I would encourage, like what I'm doing now, I'm encouraging people to follow me, and I'm hoping I'm answering this question properly. And if not, I hope he just types back in and say, no, that's not what I mean, and kind of be more a little specific. But you know, I'm trying to encourage people, hey, follow me on Pandora, follow me on Spotify, follow me on, Upstream, follow me on Mixcloud, or follow me on, all these different platforms, because they're streaming platforms. And I also, I'm working on kind of like for loyal fans that, follow and purchase my music, and I see they're purchasing music. I may surprise you one day and email you a zip folder full of my new unreleased stuff, and you'll have it before anybody else. So that's a way also of drawing people in to follow what you do. Offer them something, because if they're going to follow you and spend money on you, then you have to give them something back besides, yeah, I made a track, here you go, come get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So talk a little bit about it. It's like going back to the question too. And then Ray, if he answered your question, cool. If not, drop a comment.
Yeah, please.
For sure. Let us know, give us some feedback. What's some advice that you've been given that was really, that you felt like, hey, that was good advice, I want to share it?
Well, from our godfather of house, the late Frankie Knuckles, one of the things that he said that we all believe and reign true today is, if you become bigger than the music, you failed. You cannot be bigger than the music. And there's a lot of guys out here that try to become bigger than the music that they're playing and make it all about them, when the whole thing as a DJ, as a producer, as a creator, has always just been about making good music and making it from the heart. Everybody has a certain taste or a certain style. Your music is not going to grab everybody. So you have to, again, there's that word again, you have to find your niche. You have to find your micro niche, those people that like your sound and want to continue to hear what that is. Everybody didn't like jazz, but jazz got a following. Everybody didn't like rock and roll, but rock and roll got a following, and so on and so on. So you have to nourish that niche, create your sound, and just get it out there and do it from the heart. If you start making, the other best advice I can give you, if you're making music only to make money, get out the game. You lost. It's over. It's done. If you're making it from the heart and you're doing it because you enjoy it and you put it out, and if it sells, fine. If it don't sell, fine. Those are typically the people that have the most success.
Certainly. So true. I totally agree with that. Now, Ray has come back with a comment. He says, Market Radio Run is working with a rep to get you small radio markets. A nightclub DJ run, go from club to club, working with DJ pools, or just digital stores like Spotify with a social media push.
Well, okay. So I've dealt with this. I mean, man, what's his name again? I'm sorry.
Ray Daniels.
Ray, if you could go to my Facebook page, I did a big rant about that, a live rant, And I also posted a lot of questions where a lot of DJs and producers chimed in on that very subject, of marketing and the push. I personally, I've never really seen it really work for somebody smaller, trying to do these things. I mean, getting the right people behind you and the right marketing people and the right type of label behind you to do these things is almost, you gotta kind of be self-made. It's just like a lot of record labels now, bigger labels, they don't pull you unless you've already got so many streams or so many YouTube followers or so many, if you're already in the upper 100,000 or something like that, then they consider it's worth, me pushing you and marketing you and sliding you here and putting you there and getting stuff out. I've seen a lot of these companies pass and fail, even with my own music and my associates' music in the same breath, where it works and it don't work. I don't really have a recommendation for that because, I'm kind of back on the old school grind of things where, I'm trying to get back into that, what do you call, selling mixtapes from your trunk type deal.
That hustle.
I'm finding that to work a lot better for me than falling prey to the whole digital slam of, trying to get people to get you to a certain point or to, develop these strategies for you to get you here and there. I find that it is very money draining and very time consuming. And it's like going to Vegas shooting dice. It's a hit or miss. Sometimes you hit a 7, sometimes you hit snake eyes. It just depends.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the scene in Chicago for artists that are coming up right now versus the scene in ATL or the scene in LA or the scene in, even New York, the scene in other places. Talk about that, what it's like for artists coming up in Chicago now versus in other markets.
Well, I can't really speak on that per se. I mean, only thing I could go on when we talk artists, you got to remember, I'm a specific genre, which is house music. So I can't speak on a hip hop guy or R&B guy or anything like that. Now, house music is a very competitive, cutthroat, but I think that's the music industry in general, type of scene. So the best way I can explain that is I have some new artists I'm getting ready to work with now. And the reason why I'm working with them is because I'm 54 years old. Okay, I'm not going to DJ forever and all of this kind of stuff. So, I'm looking for new artists that are younger, that are going to attract new youth, new children, new teenagers, new young adults, because people like seeing people that look like them on stage, just like I did when I was coming up. So I'm looking for those new singers, that's between the ages of 16 and 25 years old, that's got a good set of pipes on them. They look good. They can deliver a song. They got stage presence, and stuff like that. And then have a love for the music. Right. If they don't have a love for the music or they can't get into the music, it's hard for them to deliver it to the audience because they're not convincing. I've heard songs where, you can hear the person sing the song, but you can tell they don't really feel it when they sing it. They're just singing it, because they got paid to sing it. So right now, the industry in Chicago has always had a good stable of all types of singers, whether it be, R&B, jazz, blues. They had a good stable of rappers and stuff like that. It's just that Chicago doesn't show love to Chicago artists. You have to go out of state or out of country and then come back. That has always been the case with R. Kelly, Kanye West, Common Sense. I mean, everybody had to go away and come back in. You know, I don't know what it is about Chicago that really doesn't support their artists, you know, like they should. But soon as you blow up big, Chicago is the first, you know, place to claim you. Like, oh yeah, you know, yeah, they came from here, yeah, yeah, you know, yay, they're true Chicago. And you be like, well, what happened to everybody when I was struggling out here trying to eat and make money, right? You know, now I'm making money. All of a sudden, Chicago wants to claim me, you know. So I feel bad for a lot of artists that are starting in Chicago and trying to get out, because I know what's ahead of them, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And I'm gonna say this to you all that are listening, that even inspired to do that. Don't make your focus Chicago. Make your focus abroad. Make your focus in a statewide or countrywide or whatever you want to do. But a lot of times we get caught up because we're in this space and you're figuring, hey man, you know, I'm trying to get my fan base, and you know, where's everybody at? And we get so focused on trying to get it in Chicago till it gets disheartening, and you feel like, man, nobody's coming out to support me, nobody's doing this. And I'm gonna just tell you right now, you're gonna get a handful of people, you may get a lot of people, but at the same time, don't just focus on Chicago. Focus on everywhere, trying to get your music everywhere, trying to get your voice heard everywhere. Because locally, and I'm sure some people are dealing with that in their own hometowns as well, certain places. Because I've heard happening in Detroit, I've heard it happening in Maryland, I've heard it happening in New York. You know, New York, though, is a lot more supportive of their artists, and they create a lot more things for their artists than Chicago does any day. I will say that.
I love the fact that, you know, you're shedding this light and, you know, you're sharing your perspective, because, you know, not everybody knows. And now we have someone who is from Chicago, one of the godfathers of Chicago house music, you know, sharing.
I wouldn't call myself a godfather. I would call myself a godfather. I would call myself one of the people that was instrumental in helping to grow the culture and the sound. And I was there with a lot of the godfathers and a lot of the guys that helped to create the sound, and we all kind of learned from each other. And then once that happened, we kind of just broke off and kind of went in our own directions, doing our own thing. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like birthing a child and watching it grow, because when you think about, here we are 15 or 16 years old, beating out on drum machines and samplers in our bedroom and 4-track recorders, and we're trying to record, and we're taking samples from this and we're trying to create a beat on that, and we're learning how to play chords and keys and playing them one at a time, trying to get them to sound right. You never thought that it would blow up as big as it did, and and then birth so many other genres. So you got gospel house, you got Afro house, you got techno, you got acid, you got soulful, you got jacking house, you got new disco. So I mean, the genres just keep going on and on and on. And then the boom of the great EDM DJ is what made everybody want to be a DJ, because they were looking at all these guys from Paris and London making millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars, standing up on stage, fist pumping and playing, and fireworks going off, and cannons and t-shirts are flying, and people like, oh my God, I want to do that. I want to do that. So everybody was out trying to buy all of this gear, only to find out that it doesn't work like that.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about your festival, your music festival. So tell us about your music festival, the Music Alliance Festival that you've been doing, you know, prior to COVID. But talk a little bit about what you did prior and what you're looking to do in the future.
Well, prior, what we normally do, we would have a big outdoor event, and we would have a couple of stages, 2 or 3 stages, and they would feature singing, you know, recording artists that were in the house music industry. Then we would have a vat of different stylings of DJs that play different styles of music, and that was pretty much it. It's very cut and dry. You know, it's a very loving atmosphere. Everybody comes together. One of the good things about house music, it never promoted violence. And all the time that house music has been around, there's never really been a genuine recorded violent act. Is, you know, and I'm not bashing hip hop, but we do know hip hop and the lyrics and words bring a certain element and things pop off, things happen. And that was never the case in house music. House music was one of the places, like, let's go back to Mendel Bi-Level, where two rival gang members would come together in Mendel Bi-Level at that time and party, hug each other, dance, sweat till they're drenched, and leave. And they may be opposing gangs, and they'll shake hands and high five each other and be like, "You didn't see me here. No, I didn't see you here either." And then it was gone. It was always about love and peace and unity and sharing and growth, you know. So that's what we try and bring to the festival. It's kind of like a modern day Woodstock.
Okay.
You know, if you will, you know, everybody comes together and they're just vibing on the music, and people bring their food, they share their food. There's vendors there, there are sponsors there, and everybody's just having a good time. You know, some people wait and bring their whole family reunions or school reunions out, and they'll come out in hundreds of thousands, and everybody will just come and hang and pitch tents and stand around the stage and listen to the music or go on about their business. And when their favorite DJ comes up, they'll check them out. If their artist comes up and they sing, they're going to go there and check them out. So that's pretty much how the festival goes. You know, it's, you know, I try and open the stage up for up and coming DJs. I try and open the stage up for up and coming artists, you know, to sing or to perform. And I try and mix them in with a lot of the veterans who've been doing it for years. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people would say nobody gives us a platform to do anything. And part of why I created the Music Alliance was to give a platform, you know, for people that always complain there was never a platform. Because I'm this guy. If you tell me you can DJ and you're 100% confident in your DJ skills, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to put you on the stage. Now, some people might tell me, "Oh, why you put him on there? Why did you put her on there? They're horrible." The crowd will tell you. I don't have to tell you. You know, so I'm not going to sit up there and tell you you're bad and you're no good or you're not a good singer. If you get up there and I gave you the platform and I gave you the mic or I gave you the decks and say, "Hey, go for it." Like they said, sometimes you only get one time to make a good impression. You got to bring it. If you don't bring it and they boo you off, I'm not saying quit. But, you know, it's going to be one of them things where that's going to be one of them hard lessons that you may always remember, and you may remember the mistakes you made that day, and you go harder and you do it better. Other people will fold under that and say, "Look, that was too much for me. I never want to go through this again. I'm out." You know. So
and it really separates people, you know, the people who really want it and who are going to push and move forward.
Right. So COVID hit us, and you know, we had a big thing planned for 2020. We had Harley Davidson, we had a bunch of dealerships, you know, and we had car clubs, we had the whole thing coming out, and it was weird. As I was planning it, you know, I told my wife, I said, "This is not going to happen." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Something's going to happen." I said, "I feel it in my gut. Something just feels weird about the atmosphere right now." And she says, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's just, you know, you worried about the 2020. I said, no. God's putting on my spirit." I said, "Something isn't right." So then I told my wife, I said, "We need to go out and start buying groceries. We need to start buying stuff." And she said, "What's wrong with you? Why?" And I said, "Something in me is just telling me we need to do that." And she was kind of humoring me like, "Okay." So we would go out and we get a few things, and I'd be like, "What you doing?" "No, we got to get more stuff." And she's like, "What is wrong with you? Nothing's gonna happen." And then, you know, COVID hit.
Right.
We're like, "What is this COVID?" And then everything just went bananas. And just luckily, we had kind of a little more than half of a stockpile of stuff. And she was like, "Whoa, I'm so glad that you made me do this," you know. And, people were asking, well, hey, you're going to do, like, a lot of people went and they started trying to do virtual concerts, which Zoom has made millions of dollars now. Zoom has been the thing because everybody's going on Zoom. And I was so disheartened. I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. It's not going to feel the same. And then you still had DJs and artists still wanting roughly the same amount of money to do a Zoom as if I was, paying them to come out live. And I'm like, you're insane. I'm not doing that. I mean, you're doing it from your home. Plus, I got to pay somebody because you have to hire. You would hire a second tier company that would come in and try and set all of that up for you. So then you had to pay them. Then you had to pay the artists, and then there's no guarantee that everybody was going to be in a mood to pay $10, $25 to watch something on their TV or their cell phone.
Right.
So I was like, no, we're not doing that. So
post-pandemic, we can see a return. But until then, you know what I mean? We might have to shut it down for a little bit. Chanel S.J. Johnson said,
what up, Chanel?
It was a loving experience. So, Chanel says, it's a loving experience.
It is. So it is totally. Yeah.
About your involvement with the homeless community in Chicago and, what you do.
Well, the whole thing for us was, my wife was real passionate. My wife is more passionate about the young girls out in the street and, not having home, having babies and, possibly getting raped or taken, so she's always been huge on sisterhood and Black feminine empowerment, and I was always passionate about, starving people. So, what we used to do at our festival, and we still do, and I say used to because, hopefully 2021 will allow us to do it again.
Right.
But I would have big bins on each side of the stage, and I would tell people, if you come in, bring fresh canned goods, I give you a discount to come in the festival, dump them in the bins. If you have book bags, paper, crayons, anything for kids, bring them in, put it in the bins. If you got clothes, bring them in, put them in the bins, and then we would talk to, different shelters or different churches, and we would donate and say, here, we got, XYZ amount of clothes, we got food. We call homeless shelters and say, hey, we got cases of canned goods, we got this, we're going to drop them off to you, so you can, take care of people. And then that kind of turned for me too, because as we started investigating into it, everybody wasn't giving these people these things. And so 2020 was going to be the thing where I was like, oh no, we're going to do this different, because we're not going to be out here collecting things for people that are in need, for people that have jobs and are able to get, and you're taking stuff from them.
Right.
That was very hurtful, and it angered me really bad. So you got somebody out here starving and you're making a paycheck, but you're going to take all the good stuff and give them whatever you feel you want them to have, or you don't give them nothing at all. I don't know what happened to that shipment. I don't know what happened to those clothes. So what we decided to do was this year, what we were going to do is go down. We have a place in Chicago called Tit City where a lot of homeless live. And we were going to go and, hand it out right there, just give it to people. And then I was going to get a few guys out with big pits, because one of my partners, they're fabricators and they build these huge grills and things like that. And I was going to get them out there and a few cooks, and we were just going to get cases of chicken, cases of hot dogs and burgers and buns and whatever we can get donated from, Jewels or Walmart, and just, feed the people. And we would give stuff out till it ran out,
Yeah. Awesome. Bree Jones says, hey, honey.
Hey, baby girl. That's my wife.
Yes.
Also a good singer, very good singer. She's on one of our songs. Yeah.
Hey, exciting. Love, Black love.
Black love, yeah.
Yes. So everyone who is tuning in, thank you so much for joining us. This is the Black Motivation Broadcast. We're here with Derek Smokin Jones. And unfortunately, we have come to the end of this week's episode the Black Motivation Broadcast. But we got a couple questions before we go. So, what words of motivation would you like to leave our audience with on this week's episode?
Never give up. If it's something that you love and it's something that you believe in, never get up. Never give up. I mean, anything worth having, I found is a struggle. It's hard. Sometimes things come very easy because the Most High blesses you that way, and other times, we have to work for His purpose, and sometimes His purpose is for us to travel a rocky road, either for us to learn something or somebody that's in the background watching us. Sometimes we're teaching and show people things based off our actions, and we don't even realize that we're educating somebody, and we get so caught up in like, man, this is not working and this is not working. But they see you constantly trudging on. They see you constantly grinding. They see you constantly trying, and then you become an inspiration to them and you don't even know it. Right. So don't give up. Yeah. If it's something you really love.
So true. I just received some of that advice earlier. So I feel you. That is confirmation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right there. So tell us, how can we find you and support you on social media and the web?
Okay, social media, I'm Derek, Derek Jones, Jones, on Facebook. And I have a fan page, is Derek, Derek Smokin, Smokin Jones. Otherwise, the easiest way to find me, if you're computer literate, go to Google, type in Derek Smokin Jones, and boom, you'll find everything. So you'll find the Twitter, the Twitch, the Mixcloud, the SoundCloud, the everything. Just everything. Google. Google is your friend.
Google is your friend, for sure. And while you are Googling that, you can Google Black Truth Media on all platforms. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube and www.blacktruthmedia.com. This has been such a pleasure. I'm so excited that we were able to bring you on and have you give a little bit of your history. You know what I mean? Talk to us and share your story, your advice, and your truth with us on this episode. So I want to thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
For sure. So this has been an awesome, awesome episode of the Black Motivation Broadcast, y'all. We are out.